good to go. Okay, and then so Malcolm and I do these monthly film discussions on Mars Hill blog, and yes, it seemed topical to do the death of Stalin, and which is what we will be doing this evening. And yes, if you want to contribute, please do add any comments on if you're watching via my YouTube page or my blog, and we will incorporate them into the discussion, and hopefully all will be well. So I'm having to sign into everything today. Okay, here we go. I do apologize for this. I didn't realize this was on a laptop I hadn't used for a while, and I suddenly realized that I had to sign in and everything, and that was a bit of a shock. I left it a bit late. Hang on. So here we are, and I will join Malcolm to. Yes. Here we are. Good evening, Malcolm.
Good evening, Mr. Bergin.
I apologise for the delay. As I was just saying to viewers, I hadn't used this laptop for a while, and you know it is sometimes when you haven't used it for a while, it suddenly wants you to sign into everything. And on one of them, I forgot my password, so I had to move very quickly.
Well, I mean, I sympathise. I would get it wrong with a laptop I'd been using for the last 5 years. So, I mean, age, I don't discriminate.
No,
but we're here now.
We are here now, and yes. So, how is everything?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good.
I just had the unfortunate news earlier that one of my nieces, who was playing on a fence earlier, fell off, and she's broken her arm. The poor thing. So she's spending the night in the hospital with a busted arm. But it looks like she's okay apart from that. So she's got a story to tell for the future.
One of my relatives has triple heart bypass within the next few days.
Right. Gosh,
So,
well, it goes well for them.
Yes, indeed. So it does seem a bit... but
the time for accidents, it seems. Well, that's not an accident. That's just an operation.
No, yeah.
The time for
I know what you mean. But
so how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good.
So the death of Stalin. It's a bit apt at the moment, didn't it? Given
Very
that
much
sure
so.
It's in the news a lot lately.
Yeah, I watched it a few weeks ago when it was on Netflix still. I got in there just before they took it off.
Oh, they got a bit paranoid and scared, did they?
No, they changed the films that are available from time to time, and it had just got to the end of its run, like happens, I guess, with films on iPlayer.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, I wasn't expecting much from it. I'm not a huge fan of the writer Inucci.
Yeah.
Although I have to admit that a friend of mine used to show me clips of Malcolm Tucker, The Thick of It.
Yes.
Which I thought were hilarious. But,
they swore in literally every other word.
He swears quite a lot. Yeah. I was a bit taken aback, but he does do it to very good effect.
Yeah.
The madness of British politics. I'm sure it's very accurate. Yeah, I was so glad that I did watch it because it's one of the funniest films I'd seen in, a long time. So yeah, I'm delighted to be able to talk about it.
Well, let's talk about the beginning first. Well, let's start with precursor, because just on the off chance no one knows who Stalin was, which is very unlikely, but just as a quick recap, shall we say.
Yeah.
Joseph Stalin was first secretary of the Communist Party of the USSR and dictator of the Soviet Union from around 1924 until his relatively sudden death in 1953. He was paranoid, he was megalomaniac, and he ran Russia like a total prison camp. Well, not just Russia, it's satellite countries. And, you know, I do think perhaps some of the anger and stuff towards Russia from a neighboring former Soviet states is perhaps in part due to that period in time, although some of it will come from longer periods like time of Tsarist Russia, etc. But Stalin, he literally, everyone was scared. He spared no one who crossed him, or very, very few. And even then, it was more by potluck, it seems, than actual definitive favoritism. And then he has a series of strokes and dies.
His name is very relevant. He is very relevant to us now.
Yeah.
Because of what's happening in the Ukraine.
Yes.
One thinks back to the late 20s or the early 30s. Ukraine suffered a famine.
Yes.
It was entirely man-made, or rather Stalin-made.
And Ukraine's facing a famine at the moment. Well, not Ukraine, but other countries are facing a famine because of Russia's blockade of...
Well, yeah, there is that. But in terms of Ukraine's relationship to Russia, we see Putin invading the country. So this is, in a sense, a continuation of this disaster is a continuation of the disaster that occurred in the late 20s, early 30s with the famine there. So it's little wonder that Ukraine's not so fond of any Russian involvement in their country whatsoever, quite rightly.
Yeah.
But
sorry, you were going to...
I was going to say, I was going to say one could draw comparisons with Stalin and Putin, but I think, well, they're both tyrants in their way, but different types.
Yes.
Stalin, at the moment, he was responsible for many more deaths than even Putin was. He's one of the top three great tyrants of the 20th century, with Hitler and Chairman Mao. So, all socialists of a different kind.
Yes.
On the left and the right.
So let's talk about the beginning of the film, because I think that shows in a nutshell what we're dealing with Stalin. And it lays the ground to the effect he had on Russians in nearly all aspects of society. And I don't think this is a spoiler as such, because it was known about before the film came out. And it's actually based on a true story. It's apparently happened. Soviet radio performed this, I forget who the composer was, but they did this particular classical piece in Moscow. Those who are broadcasting it get a phone call from Stalin towards the end of the broadcast saying that he's listening to this. He will send someone to pick up the recording. Was a recording made? No, a recording was not made. They go, understandably, very nervous and frightened. I mean, to begin with, could you call Comrade Stalin 17 minutes? And it shows how frightening, because they're discussing, is this 60 minutes and 52 seconds? Is this, they want it right back. And they have kittens over the exact timing to ring him up. And I think that says something. And in order, and this is apparently true, in order to, they keep some of the people of there, so they drag people in off the streets. They keep as many of the audience there as possible. The conductor has a faints or has an accident. He has an accident in the film, and they go and they send guards to collect another conductor who's wearing in his pajamas and dressing gown conducts this whole recording again.
Yeah.
Just as they bring the recording to the guards, they're like, 2 hours, 17 minutes delay, this will be logged. And the guard, he's saying, the guard who comes to collect it is saying this to protect his own skin. You've got a pianist who's a bit of who has dissident views, saying she has a note for Comrade Stalin to put in touch, and the person responsible for the broadcasting knows what she's up to and tries to stop it because he's terrified he's going to be caught by association. And
Yeah.
the thing is, watching it, I don't know how you felt with the scene. Part of you is laughing and finding it funny. Part of you has that sense of fear that they're having, that, oh my goodness, they need to get this done now or else.
Well, it was so well done. I was quite carried away by it. You're right. It combines fear and humor so well. I didn't realize it was a real scene.
Yeah. The bit about the pianist at the end, I think, was fiction, but the actual basic story that they had to, Stalin rang up, asked for a recording, they kept him on it and did it all over again and had to get a fresh conductor, is apparently true.
It's a perfect microcosm of the way in which the film combines humor and really dreadful events so well. No matter how the humor never, in either this scene or in the film as a whole, it never dominates. There's always that sense of danger there. So there's drama and the humor. It's perfectly combined, and it's quite surreal it feels quite surreal right at the beginning with the argument over the timings, grabbing anyone in off the street, terrible corruption of the wedding story in one of whichever gospel it's in. But the confused people coming in, the snotty guard at the end. It's done so well. It was Iannucci who wrote it, wasn't it? As well as Stalin.
It was based on a comic novel, apparently, graphic comic novel.
Okay. Well, he's realised the film version so well. I think the film is something close to a piece of genius. And this scene sets it off perfectly in establishing the mood, the theme. Well, not the theme of the film, but the mood of it, how they're going to play it. And they sustain it expertly throughout. It's
based, so I just looked this up, based on the French graphic novel La Mort de Stalin, published in installments from 2010 to 2012.
Right. Okay.
So, yes, it's
quite recent as well.
Yes. Yeah, and it won the first volume, won the Historia Prize, and the second won the Le Prix Chateau de Chevenay de la Bande dessinée historique in the Rendezvous de la History Festival.
Right.
It's like my French pronunciation.
Apologies to our French viewers.
Yes, pardonnez-moi. I find it difficult to speak French well. You've got to
I know
the English accent, and I can't. I try and I can succeed to a degree, but not fully.
You do better than me, to be honest. So I sympathise again.
Yeah, but you were saying, sorry, I had interrupted.
Yeah, so I think the opening scene establishes the mood of the film just perfectly, absolutely perfectly, especially in respect of how it's going to play it, the humor versus the drama. Taking it, I suppose in a sense the best thing of all is that right from the start we know they're not worrying about accents.
No, they were very clever with accents. If you listen carefully, it was like the Soviet Union, and I wanted to touch on the accents, so I'm glad you raised this. The Soviet Union as even Russia today is the largest country in the world, and you've got a whole plethora of accents. And what they wanted to do is they wanted some of the accents to represent how they would be seen in Russia. So what would the equivalent of a Cockney accent and Cockney culture be in Russia? Or Stalin, rough Georgian. Yeah, and so on and so on. So the accents were they picked actors who could do certain accents, or would do their own accent, and it was very carefully done in that regard. That's my understanding. And of course, Stalin was, and you do kind of get. No disrespect to people in South London or the East End, but because they're not seen like it, But of course, you do get the sort of gangster culture that permeates part of that.
Sure.
Well, again, I feel bad to say it, but there we have it. And so Stalin, does sort of strike you as someone in this film as someone who would be a rival of the Krays.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I hadn't thought about that, but it's a dangerous thing because it can easily, I think, derail the film. And I think here, especially of how accents were used by Oliver Stone in his Alexander the Great film.
Yeah,
he does something similar. He has either the Macedonians, some of them, perhaps the more posh ones, have English accents, while others have Irish, of all things, accents. Actually, it's not quite as simple as that because Colin Farrell has an Irish accent.
Yes, one of his first on-screen appearances was in Ballykiss Angel.
Yeah, so it really doesn't work in the film.
No.
I think because it's very uncommon to hear an Irish accent on the film, and as a result, it's difficult to get past the fact that, hold on, this is ancient Greece or ancient Macedonia, and the guy's got an Irish accent. It's not immersive, whereas with the English one, you're so used to hearing it that you don't worry or think about it so much. So in Death of Stalin, it worked. Alexander, it didn't so much.
How have you managed with watching Sean Connery films over the years?
To be honest, most of the time I'm just watching him in James Bond.
Yeah.
The one other example is Red October, The Hunt for Red October.
Yes.
And the story's so strong that, he sounds Scottish, but it's Sean Connery. So I say, let it be. I'm not going to fuss about it. I know that it's Connery. He's not trying with the accent, but we're just going to cut him a break on this one because the story's so good. We're just going to get over that, get over ourselves, and get on with the story. So I think if I was watching him in any other film, because he's so well known for just having the Scottish accent all the time, it's just one of those things. It is what it is, as they say. So it's not worth worrying about. So it's a slightly different context for this film and say for one like Alexander, where you're not used to it. Hearing ancient Greeks or Macedonians speaking with Irish accents.
Yes.
So different circumstance. I mean, maybe you could say I should just get over it, and I probably should, But it is in that moment when I'm watching the film more difficult because of where I'm approaching it from.
Yeah. While it's interesting we talk about Stalin and those around him, because whilst the sorry, I saw something and I completely lost my train of thought. Whilst the orchestral scenes take place, Stalin's having a meeting at the dacha. At his dacha, or not dacha, he's having a social event. But with some of the Politburo, but they're not really social events. The members of the Politburo doing their utmost to stay alive in his good books. And there's a moment you get the characters of those who are like Khrushchev, who uses humor in order to stay in Stalin's good books. You've got the sort of sneakiness of Beria. And then you've got the sort of almost heartbreaking naivety of Malenkov, who just does not get, is not ever able to read a scene in front of him at all.
How he ever got into any position of power is beyond me.
Probably because he was usable, but that scene of, well, what happened to Poliakov? What happened to Poliakov, by the way? And the look on Stalin's face, he says, you want to know what happened to Poliakov? Do you want to end up like him? And you just feel that. And then, of course, Stalin gets distracted by the sort of mock fight between Khrushchev and Beria. And then, of course, there's Molotov, who prides himself of being that close to Stalin and staying alive, who is literally a whisker. And some historical accounts verify this. I don't know how true it is, but some historians believe this, that Molotov was within a whisker of being purged himself when Stalin died. Had Stalin not had the series of strokes and died, he too would have ended up in a horrendous situation. And you do get the kind of viciousness of Beria, the goodbye Molotov, goodbye forever. And then saying to one of the guards, about list of the forthcoming purges, kill him and make sure he sees it first, dump him in the pulpit, blah, 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 the rest I leave to you. What do you make of that scene? Sorry, I did go on a bit about it.
Well, the first thing with the social event, if I remember rightly, they're meeting around the table. They're around a table, or is that? Am I conflating it with another later scene?
They are having. It is around a dinner table.
Yeah, because it did remind me of an anecdote. I have to get in that I heard about Stalin once. That when he was seeking other people's opinions, he never gave his first. He would go round the table first of all to get everyone else's, and then he would basically a way of seeing which way the wind was blowing, and then he would give his. The whole dacha scene. I mean, Stalin. The Cockney accent. It took a bit of getting used to.
Yeah.
I have to admit, just because I'm so familiar with it, living in London. It took a bit of getting used to, but the actor playing him, I forget his name, was so good.
Yeah. He's a relatively unknown actor who played him. I don't think
wasn't Beale. No, that was Beria, wasn't it?
Adrian McLaughlin, I think.
Okay, no, I don't know him.
British stage, television, and film actor.
Right.
What else has he been? He appeared in Taking Steps in 2009. He tends to do, I think, more theatre than TV and film, but he's got his own theatre company even. But he's he's
never so good. I mean, there wasn't one actor there who was out of place.
No,
Michael Palin, I think of all. Well, I wouldn't say he's the weakest, but it did feel a bit Monty Python-ish with him. But
Monty Python humour can be somewhat dark at times.
It wasn't just that; it's just so distinctive.
Yes.
He was very distinctive, and so was Paul Whitehouse.
Oh yes,
because of the Fast Show.
Okay.
But it was just a really well realized scene. The whole part of it, the guards at the door.
There were some films where I remember, and even the trailer, I can remember the first time where I laughed at certain points for the first time, and that was one of the very first. I think that was, having seen that bit with the guards at the door. I think that gave me my first laugh in it, as it were, which was where the record's delivered to Stalin about 2 hours 70 minutes late. He makes some sarcastic comment to the guards saying, "What did you do? Walk here?"
Yeah.
And of course, he listens to it. Recording's not the recording is not that brilliant. Sees the note, starts laughing, and then he has the stroke. Yeah. And the guards outside can hear his body slam on the floor. And of course, one goes to, and this just shows how fearful. One guy goes to the other, "Should we go and investigate?" And the other guy says, "Do you want to shut the F up and or get us both shot?" And said a bit more menacingly than I've just said it. And again, apparently there's something true there, and that there's some speculation as to whether Stalin's life could have been saved had he been discovered earlier.
Because he was left overnight, I think, or for
because people were scared. He didn't come out. People wonder what's going on. Then the light went on, so I think he was having several strokes that each one's worse than the other. And I think it was only about 12 hours. The film speeds everything up. But apparently in real life, it was about 12 hours before he was when he was last seen and when they went to investigate. And he was found semi-conscious, unable to speak, on the floor, to paraphrase Khrushchev in the film, a puddle of indignity.
In his own urine, which apparently was what happened, or how they found him.
But they were too terrified to investigate. The first sign something was perhaps not right. They thought, well, maybe he's been, getting, doing his drink, etc. He didn't like people coming in unannounced. He didn't like, like any, and if you bear in mind he's a paranoid dictator, that makes sense. But it's like there's an argument to suggest that Stalin's paranoia may have killed him.
I could well believe it. I mean, if I knew that he didn't like it and I might get shot, I would probably have said the same as that guard if I was there. Why put yourself at risk? He's either okay or he's dead, and it doesn't matter.
And the reason I laughed was like anything else in political satire, when you laugh at scenarios and situations which inspire anger and fear and incredulity. It was that, oh my goodness, they really are terrified of him. And the echo of what it was, and the laughter was, it was put in brutal that fear was put in brutal Anglo-Saxon language.
There's some good old-fashioned laughs, great jokes in the film. There's also a bit of awkward laughing, like ha ha ha, very funny, but kind of not funny. If it was happening, if you were there and it was happening, I'd be wetting my pants, that's for sure.
I mean, I think one of the most awful scenes is when he dies and they're trying to deal ruthlessly with anyone who was close to him. Now, this scene was apparently totally fictitious, but it's when the guards come in and one of them says on the loudhailer to the staff in the dacha, "Comrades, we are united in your grief and share it. Please come outside for further instructions." And they're all taken in a van, rounded up and being put into vans, ostensibly to be shot or to be put into a labour camp. And there's this scene where you see several people, like late middle age or elderly, sort of squat, the moustache, all resembling you know who. And one of them goes, "Lookalikes, looks like their contract's up." And again, it's like, but it's the grimness. It's not. I think sometimes when we laugh at scenes in this film, it's not because we find them funny. It's because it's a sort of like a shock. it's almost out of shock. It's the
Yeah,
it's the realization of what you sort of know already, that these people are it's an utterly ruthless and brutal country.
It's shock, it's amazement, it's disbelief, it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't just laugh because the thing is actually just for its own sake funny. Yeah, no, you're quite right. It is pretty terrible. The way well, people are disposed of through the film, with Beria handing out papers for various people to be shot. The guards, the army men who come in when the coup's being staged against Beria, and they're just shot left, right, and center. It's like you say, it's very brutal. It was a very brutal regime from top to bottom.
Was there a scene at all that stood out for you?
Yeah, my favorite scene is Marshal Zhukov's.
I instinctively knew you'd say Zhukov a second before you said
that was just a belly laugh. When he now let's think there. So it's after Stalin has died. They've all gathered together
for the funeral.
All the bigwigs.
Yeah.
And in he struts like the Übermensch that he is, and throws his jacket, his coat off, and he's got all the medals on him.
Yeah.
And he's talking and insulting everyone. And but he's actually very angry because the NKVD has taken over Moscow, or the Kremlin, and he's an army man. And so it's he says to I forget who,
Khrushchev.
I'm smiling,
but inside,
but I'm very fucking annoyed inside. And that is such a great line. Because it gets right to the heart of the film. All this humor, but underneath it, it's a thin layer, and underneath it is so much anger, so much rage, and violence, potential for violence. And it just flies out with Zhukov. It's right there in front of you, because you think this guy could do anything. Very annoyed, like fucking annoyed.
There's this wonderful scene where you feel, imagine what Khrushchev feels, this sense of fear and then relief, where Khrushchev says, "We need to mobilize, and I could do with your help." And Zhukov goes, "I'm going to have to report this to the Central Committee for plotting against an individual on the committee and threatening to do harm to a fellow member. And look at your affairs."
Yes. Is that Malenkov or
no? It's Khrushchev. Zhukov says it's Khrushchev.
Khrushchev. Okay, yeah. It is quality. Jason Isaacs,
and he does it in this Yorkshire accent as well. It's like, where's one want to go for some lubrication around here? Yeah.
It's I mean, the film is a real star ensemble. There's so many great actors in it.
Yeah.
But Jason Isaacs, he steals it. He really does, because his character is so...
And he does it shamelessly. He knows exactly what he's doing in that film.
Yeah, it's a masterclass for sure.
It is. It is.
He gets the best lines, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of brilliant lines, but that scene that I mentioned was certainly my favorite, the one that stands out most for me. It's very funny. It's very cold.
Yeah.
It opens up the sheer brutality of the man, and actually of the Politburo that he represents.
Who are all terrified of each other.
Yeah.
And you see two parallel events happening at the same time. You've got a considerable number of the Politburo jockeying for position, for best position at Stalin's funeral. Then you've got a token few, and I mean a tiny amount of people, who are thinking about after the funeral. And that's Zhukov and that's Khrushchev. And the outside of those two groups, Beria seems to automatically assume that the power is his now for the taking. Malenkov will be in power as a front man, and he will control power behind the scenes. So Khrushchev is aware very quickly he'll have to deal with both Malenkov, because Malenkov's incompetent, gullible, and easily used, and he'll have to deal with Beria, because, well, Beria is as brutal as Stalin, in spite of his seemingly liberal moves after Stalin's death. And simply to stay alive, he's got to move very quickly and neutralize Beria.
Yeah. He is the great danger. Malenkov's, well, he's just useless. Most useless person there. Somehow the most important. But Beria would make a very great eminence grise. And so he needs to be dealt with.
I mean, Beria is just horrible in his personal life, in his political life, just generally horrible. And yet they move against him with such ruthlessness. It's shocking. You know, in real life, though, there was a secret trial, and there was 2 months that took place between that and his execution, whereas here it's like a matter of 15 minutes. I mean, they did arrange with Zhukov before, and there was a button under the table to press at the appropriate time for guards to come and arrest. But that all happened, and apparently there was such a move against Beria that there was a sort of feeling in the air, and you know, he was one, should you go to this meeting? He said, "Oh, I'll be fine." Apparently, and clearly,
it's like Julius Caesar being told to stay away from the
Senate. It's the arrogance of power, assuming that you're now beyond reproach. No, you're not, and he and of course Beria was terrified, which is, given the terror that he threw on others, is, you know, there was a sort some would see as poetic justice. But in this one, it's absolutely brutal. About 15 minutes, I would say, from the moment the guards come in to when he's shot in the head. And
burnt.
I mean, you kind of look at it, and part of you thinking that whilst it's good that Beria has faced justice, this is not necessarily the appropriate justice is in the court of law. And this is different. And also, you got that horrible feeling that they're sort of tainted by Stalin's brutality.
I mean, I wouldn't go hard on the justice thing. Certainly in terms of the film, he didn't get it. But I think no one got it between 1918 and 1989, 90. Justice is impossible in a tyrannous regime. When the main thing that they want to do is maintain personal power in the leaders or party power.
But I mean, you say between 1918 and 1989, part of the reason we're discussing this film is because Russia's in the news again over the invasion of Afghanistan and
Ukraine.
Ukraine. I said Afghanistan, I meant Ukraine. I do apologize. Seriously.
Next year, Ronald Reagan becomes president of America.
But no,
his election.
Well, no, the Russian invasion of Afghanistan did help bring down the USSR.
Well, it didn't help them. I don't know how far you could say it brought it down, but
But of course, as Alexei Navalny would tell you, there's, you know, where is justice today?
Well, exactly. He's in prison unfairly. He's alive, no thanks to Russia.
As is Vladimir, what's his name? Another dissident in Russia who was arrested, and his wife, who's in exile, fears he will be executed. So there are echoes with the film today.
The cultural fear, I'm quite sure is there. What the one leader that everyone must do what he says. the one leader who is quite possibly very scared. I saw a photo of Putin the other day, someone pointing out the way he's wearing his jacket looks like he's actually had a bulletproof vest on underneath.
And also the fact when he sits at a table, I'm sure part of this is paranoia. Those he sits with are well away from him. You know, but given the
I don't know if that's a COVID measure, but yeah.
Even so, that's excessive paranoia. I mean, but given the Salisbury poisonings, given what happened to Alexander Litvinenko, given what he's been doing to his opponents, it's understandable that someone like that, who is prepared to go to such ruthless lengths, who has tried to influence through cyber, trolls and everything else, elections abroad and everything else, it's inevitable that someone who behaves like that ends up being paranoid, because they're going to assume that the same is going to be returned to them.
I mean, that,
Malcolm, you froze. Oh, hang on, you froze momentarily. What did you just say?
Okay, and I was just saying it's a one-way road.
Yeah.
When you engage that kind of behavior, if you keep doing it, I suspect it becomes harder and harder to stop it. There's a point of no return, the Rubicon. And I haven't got any impression that he's ever wanted to stop it. I don't know when it started, whether he was like that from the beginning or...
I think in some respects he was like that from the beginning, if you look at his background.
Yeah, but I always think back to post or after the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah.
He was a real friend of America at that. I assume
it was
in retrospect, perhaps it was just words. He had his own agenda.
Yeah, was it a friendship of convenience at that time? That's, you know what I mean? Use America to get rid of a potential nuisance.
Could well have been. Paranoia is the only direction you're going in. And I imagine he'll be a little lucky if he dies in his sleep, the way it's going in Ukraine, unless they actually win the war at some point. But if they get driven out, especially, one would wonder whether he would then lose his power within Russia.
I think what will happen is he will possibly retain leadership in Russia to the end of his life, which will some time away, depending on whether the rumours about his health are true.
Sure.
But that Russia will be such an isolated country that when he's gone, whoever succeeds him will want to do whatever it takes for Russia to get back into being the major player. That's the hope. That's looking at realism and also with a degree of hope, but we'll see.
Yeah, a lot depends on how united the West remains in respect of its sanctions. If they remain united, Russia, certainly is in a lot of trouble, economic trouble. We'll see where that leads. But if they start to dissolve a bit, because it seems to me there are politicians in Europe who would actually like, who aren't exactly standing foursquare against Russia in Ukraine. I keep saying the Ukraine. It's what we said when we were younger, but apparently you don't say that now.
Yeah. So, just like you don't spell Kiev K-I-E-V, you spell it K-Y-I-V.
Oh yeah. So that's a long term thing. We just have to wait and see how that goes. But I think it all depends upon what happens in Ukraine. Do they win or not? Do they get pushed out or not, basically?
Yes.
I suppose the midway is if there's a stalemate and they keep the eastern regions, and Ukraine can't push them out completely, what happens then? It's neither a win nor a defeat, exactly.
No. Well, we shall see. We shall see. I've just been looking to see whether there's any comments made on this video, and there haven't. There was in a previous video, someone had left a comment, and I didn't see it until almost the very end. And
All right.
I will hang on. See if I can find it, because I did say I would read it. Yes, it's from called Empress Industries. This was when we discussed Amundsen and Operation Mincemeat, and said, hello, I thought John Lithgow did an excellent job as the elder Churchill on the Crown, and also that David Arnold's score for Godzilla is quite excellent too. So
Well, David Arnold is a great composer. We know that for sure.
Yeah.
He
He
of
said,
Solace and other films.
Yeah, I do see him as a successor to John Barry. And John Lithgow did do a good job as Churchill in the Crown. So yes, I do try and bring in
what, in Mincemeat?
Yeah.
Was that him in Mincemeat? Okay.
He was played in Mincemeat. He was played by Simon Russell Beale, who played Berrier in
Berrier, yeah.
Discuss.
So, which film is Lithgow Churchill in then?
The Crown, the series.
The Crown, right. I've not seen it, so.
No.
Right, so I can't speak to that, unfortunately.
No.
But I think I know who Empress Industries is, so hello to him.
Okay.
If he's watching at a later date. It's good to see his name there.
Yeah. Empress Industries.
Yeah, he's a good fellow.
Yeah.
We've met on another live stream, chatting on another live stream. So that's, it's lovely to hear from him.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, it just goes to show we're not broadcasting into thin air when we get these comments. so if you do,
that's true.
Watch, do come in, and if you're watching live, we will at either then or at some point we'll try and incorporate your comments into the film. I think we've gone as far as we can with the death of Stalin, except with 10 the highest and 1 the lowest. How would you rate the film out of 10?
Oh, I have to say 9.
9.
I have to say 9 because it's so well written.
I would probably say 8.5 or 8, simply because some of it's just too cold or brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, Stalin is not a good advert. I mean, we talk about regions. Stalin is not a good advertisement for Russia or his native Georgia.
Humanity in general,
and Georgia seems to handle itself as a country far better than Russia can.
Yeah. He was a despicable person.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the people in that film were awful people in one way or another.
Some of them lived to be very
We can't
old.
let the fact that they're funny disguise that. In real life, they were grim. All of them.
Some of them lived to be very, very old, the ones who survived. Molotov died as late as 1986.
Right.
He lived to see Gorbachev become leader. And there's one member of the Politburo who had seen the whole from 1917 to died shortly before the end of the Soviet Union in 1991 at the age of 98. But he was the one in the film who goes, how can you run and plot at the same time, to Khrushchev?
Oh, yes.
I forget the character, but it was that character. But he had Alzheimer's towards the end, so I don't think he lived to see the sort of liberalism that merged in Russia. And I think one of the things I find very sad about Russia in my lifetime is in the 1990s, I had such great hope for Russia. I thought, here it is on the path to multi-party democracy and, being the country that it's meant to be. And
it's a great country in literature, music, in religion. The beauty of the Russian Orthodox Church is,
or the current patriarch backing Putin is putting the.
Well, Kirill is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace to the faith.
Yeah.
And he. Well, I hope he can square it in his conscience. I want to say he's got a lot to talk about with God at the end.
Well, we all do.
The state of his soul is not for me to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, but in his outward words, actions, thoroughly disgraceful.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, literature, music, religion, arts in general. Russia has given so much and still continues to give. Its politics since the fall of Tsarism. Well, since before the fall of Tsarism, the failure of the Tsars to reform properly.
If they'd reformed properly,
they've really let the country down. Their leaders, from Nicholas, probably before him onwards. Perhaps you could trace today back to the 1860s when Alexander III was assassinated, and that put the kibosh.
And Alexander II was that his successor was Alexander III.
Right, but there was a point where was it the second Alexander II?
He brought in these reforms, and
then he was assassinated.
Yes, by the hard left, who wanted.
And in a way, the country hasn't recovered politically or developed in a more peaceful direction politically, because the lack of reforms increased the pressure on the top from below. That led to the revolution, the overthrow of the provisional government, and then communism, and then unfortunately the failures of I suppose Gorbachev and Yeltsin have given us Putin, and we are where we are now. So it's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy what's happened to the country, what continues to happen on account of its leaders. They deserve, Russians do deserve so much better than what they've, the last 150 odd years at least. One could cry for Russia quite easily.
Well, thank you for your time, Malcolm. Thank you for this discussion. I hope when we come to discuss our next film, it will be a bit more light-hearted. I think at some point this year we'll need to discuss another Bond film or revisit one because of the 60th anniversary. But
I'd love to at some point discuss one or the Jason Bourne trilogy.
Okay.
Get the last two, but the first three I'd love to discuss at some point.
Okay.
But Bond, definitely. I'm very much looking forward to seeing License to Kill at the weekend.
The cinema. I
Another-
have not seen it at the cinema because I was a good boy and I wasn't 15 at the time. But I did see The Living Daylights.
Yeah.
It was the first one I saw at the cinema, and then it was another 8 years before I saw GoldenEye. But I've seen everyone since.
I think License to Kill was the first one I saw at the cinema.
Oh, right.
But you reminded me, I went to see Young Guns when I was 17, and it was an 18 film, and I forgot and tried to get when I bought my ticket, to pay the children's rate. Before I remembered, oh no, hold on, I'm supposed to be 18. Fortunately, they still let me through. But it's a great film, very worth watching.
Yeah, I want to see The Spy Love Me at the cinema if possible, and From Russia with Love and On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But
I think that was being shown the other day.
What? From Russia with Love?
No, Majesty's Secret Service.
Yes, it was. So I probably missed out on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we shall see. But
yeah,
anyway,
Bond, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, Malcolm, and hope to catch up with you soon.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you ever so much.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
and you. God bless. Bye.